Hey guys, it's me, Mr. 250, and welcome back to Higurashi. So it turns out we can trust no one, not even our doctor, apparently. He just thinks we're crazy and, he deserved to die. It's not us. So let's continue after having escaped from the hospital. My body, or the body, wasn't there, I should say. The police didn't arrest me because of that, but I didn't know whether to feel happy about it. Oh, right, yeah, we attempted to dig up the body, that's right. Just like Satoko had said, I failed to kill her uncle. The body wasn't there, so I was forced to conclude as much, no matter what strange natural disaster, coincidence, or miracle it might have implied. In order to free Satoko, I became a demon. And this abnormal world was my reward. Yes, metaphorically, I'd fallen into the demon world. But if that price had been in exchange for the life of Satoku's uncle, then that would have been fine. Since Satoku's uncle was still alive, still shackling her to him, I needed to become a demon once again. One more time. No, as many times as it took. I would kill that man over and over again until Satoko was liberated. I had already awoken. I looked at the clock to see that it was early in the morning, at just about 5. It was already light outside. Once I'd hardened my resolve to become a demon again. I could feel my whole body teeming with the awakened power once more. I think that means that you're a bad person, Keiichi. Time wasn't an issue. No matter what, I'd do it. I got myself up. The exhaustion from the past 2 days was completely swept away, and I didn't even feel sleepy anymore either. I slowly rose and made sure my body was moving like I wanted it to. I could feel blood flowing through each and every one of my fingers. As I got dressed, I let my mind wander, and had a strange thought. These 2 days, while I've said it was for Satoko's sake, the only thing in my mind has been killing. I've said it was for Satoko, but while actually carrying out the act, I'd completely forgotten about Satoko, I'll bet only temporarily. Maybe initially it was for Satoko's sake, but now I was just a demon, killing for the sake of killing. And as a result, I'd sunk into a world fit for such a demon. Maybe it was the same for Satoshi. He'd resolved himself to kill his aunt to save Satoko, becoming a demon, then disappeared from the sunlit Hinamizawa, vanishing into the demon world. Which meant that, after all was said and done, I'd met the same fate as him. I tried to avoid making the same mistakes, but it happened anyway. Which meant that maybe Satoshi was here. Satoshi had come to this world a year before me, so he would be here somewhere. Then, surprised, I stopped walking. There was the second set of footsteps I'd grown so used to hearing.
お前、ひょっとして、サトシなのか?
The empty, lifeless air wouldn't give me an answer. But I felt a strange kind of relief. That there was someone there, that Satoshi had stuck with me the whole time. Let's go, Satoshi. Once more. This time we will set Satoko free for sure. I quietly slipped out of the house so my parents wouldn't notice. Your parents have been, notably absent during this whole series of events. You'd think they'd be more than a little concerned about the son coming home with, mud all over his clothes multiple times. If they'd caught me now when I'd been out way too late for 2 days now, they'd give me a really angry talking to. I didn't have the time to allow for that to happen. Today, I would put an end to it. If the dead body disappeared, then I didn't have to bury it. I could just burn it to ashes, and then take them with me so I could kill him again every time he resurrected. I'd do it again. I'd kill him again. And this time, I'd set her free. Outside, the morning light was so beautiful as to stagger belief. I went to the storage room to find weapons with which I could kill him for sure. Blunt or not, it didn't matter to me. Right now, I didn't need to care whether someone saw or if the police came. This world had gone crazy after all. A world where I'd shown up at the festival and had fun, even though I wasn't there. Even if the police arrested me, I'd probably end up going right back home as if nothing had happened. Both me and that other Keiichi Maibara. Even without me, he'd fill in. I could vanish from Hinamizawa without anyone noticing. So, basically, I didn't care if I was mistakenly killed. Even if I died, Keiichi Maibara would remain. After all, this isn't the world I belong in. If I was going to be killed mistakenly for Satoko's sake, then that was just part of my duty as her Nini. As those desperate thoughts became serious, the morning air felt more refreshing to me, strangely enough.
これは怖いな。こいつにするか。
It was a hatchet meant for chopping thick firewood. That feels familiar. Wasn't that from like we got scared by Rina, and she was using a hatchet to try to get some wood out of the way or something? I think we did the same thing. Its hefty steel blade was sinister, almost as though it was a tool meant for killing people. I couldn't exactly take it out in public like that, so I wrapped it a little in some old newspaper and tossed it into the basket on my bike.
連日、悪い用事に使ってばかりで悪いな。今日も頼むぜ。俺の足。
I apologized to my bike for some reason. For the past 3 days, I'd only been using it for dangerous things. I'd been riding this bike ever since I lived in my old town. I could walk most places I wanted to go, so I hadn't used it all that much. My mom had bought it for me when I entered cram school, thinking it would be a convenient way to get to the station since it was far away. So I'd always used it to get back and forth from cram school. I'd only ever put textbooks and class materials in the front basket too. And I never tried putting a hatchet in that I'd be using to kill someone in here. When I came to Hinamizawa, life finally felt fun. I met the best friends ever, and had some of the greatest times ever. Those times might have been shattered now, but it was my greatest wish that I could get them back, even if I had to risk my life to do it. That's how fun those times had been. I'd killed someone, and now I was at it again, needing to kill someone. Murder was a crime. I didn't believe that people should ever think murder was okay. But still, the times I had were enjoyable enough for me to commit such a crime. My friends were irreplaceable, and the time spent with them a treasure. Hanging out, laughing, sometimes tricking each other, but always in a friendly way. I didn't fear committing any crime, as long as it was for the sake of taking back those times that gave my heart so much pleasure. Yes, this was a value I decided to uphold. It wasn't something I learned from a school teacher. It was a noble path that I chose for myself. I thought back to when I'd first come to Hinamizawa. About how on the very first day, Satoko had welcomed me via a blackboard eraser with a rock in it. That welcome really surprised the heck out of me. She would laugh, get angry, cry. She was never boring. She was obviously the most childlike one among us, but she was actually lively, full of vim and vigor, and good at meddling in other people's business. That went for Mion, Rina, and Rika-chan too. Wasn't Satoko the one at the center of everyone's laughing and banter? Satoko would try to look cool. Then Mion would make fun of her endlessly. Then Satoko would cry, which would put Rina into a state of ecstasy. Rika-chan would be greatly delighted. And I happened to get mixed up in it. We would always fool around like that. It was lonely when someone wasn't around, but if I had to name one for whom it was the worst, it would have been Satoko. Her smile was everyone's smile. Ever since she stopped smiling, so did the rest of us. And for the rest of us, not smiling was the same as dying. It was just like when I was silently going to cram school every day, just to maintain my unchanging test scores. So basically, we were nothing when she wasn't smiling. She was full of hot air, but she was our princess, cute and unhateable. In that case, I was her knight, searching for the dragon's castle in order to win her smile back.
ナイトなら武器は剣だろ。ツーハンデッドのかっこいいやつ。錆びた肉厚のナタで挑むナイトは、多分古今東西俺一人だな。
Then I saw an old woman on the ridge of the field waving to me.
おや圭一くんかい。朝のサイクリングかいね。
Is that old woman or was that old man? You don't sound like an old woman.
おはようございます。
I reflexively waved back in a refreshing way. Should I really have been feeling so happy waving like that? Yes, it draws suspicion off of you. He couldn't kill anyone. He said good morning to me and he was so happy. Satoko's house would be right past this road, going beyond the rice paddies. The cicadas had woken up too, and the next thing I knew was I was the audience to their daily chorus. I gave myself a hit or two in the head, and drove away my merry morning mood. I took a deep breath, then tilted my head back, quelling my pointless excitement. The body wasn't there. Its absence either meant my killing him had been an illusion, or that I'd killed him and he'd risen from the dead. If I was at the festival, then maybe I should have considered it an illusion. Coach probably thought that way, which is why he treated me like a lunatic. But it being an illusion was just impossible. I killed him without a doubt. Without a doubt. If that had been an illusion, then that would make all of the scene in Mizawa I was in right now an illusion. If that was the case, then here's how it would end up. I was actually in a vegetative state due to a traffic accident, and I was currently dreaming in a hospital bed about how great it would be to spend time with friends in rice paddies like these. That was a terrifying thought, though. If this wasn't an illusion, then the only possible answer was that he'd resurrected. It would make him a literal monster. And I would also add that if he resurrected, then he probably knows that you killed him, and if you're not going to get him a second time the same way. But if he was such a monster, then I was no less than a monster myself. I didn't hesitate to kill someone, and I could even manipulate curses. Takano-san had died, probably because I cursed her. Or maybe that was a little much. If Coach and Oishi died too, like I'd cursed them to yesterday, then I'd believe it. I set my bicycle aside and went to take a look. His motorbike wasn't here. Of course it wasn't. I sent it down to hell that night, throwing it into the Onigafuchi swamp. Or maybe, just like how the corpse wasn't here, maybe the motorbike didn't get thrown into the swamp either. The fact his bike wasn't here might have been because he'd gone to town and hadn't come back, not necessarily because I'd thrown it into the swamp. If her uncle wasn't around, then that was convenient on its own. Then I would just show myself in, then wait for him to return, sharpening my hatchet. If he was there. Forgotten sensations came back to my gut. A feeling of tension rose within me. The sensation was like poison, dulling my actions, but it could also be the trigger to allow me to awaken to my superhuman, otherworldly self. I held the hatchet, still wrapped in newspaper. Its weight in my hands was profound, sinister, and reliable. I didn't know what time it was without a clock, but it was probably still a little before 7. Satoko would probably be awake, preparing breakfast and her lunch. But her uncle would probably still be wallowing in indolence? A guy like him would probably have stayed up late drinking, and probably always slept until noon. I considered ringing the doorbell and having Satoko open the door for me, but if her uncle woke up at the sound, I'd waste my chance of him still being asleep. If Satoko saw me sneaking inside without ringing the doorbell, she'd be surprised. If I ran into her, what would I say? I've come to kill your uncle for you, so stay quiet. No, I couldn't do that. That would be like making Satoko responsible for his death. Be quiet and go wait outside. Maybe that would do it? How would Satoko react to that? She would probably try and get me to give up on killing him. I would have to lie somehow to get her to go outside. Satoko didn't need to know that a murder was going to occur in this house. I couldn't quite think of a good lie to tell her, but I couldn't do much just standing around like this. I made up my mind and grabbed the doorknob. Then slowly turned it and pulled. It wasn't locked. The gap between the door and the wall steadily grew larger. The chain wasn't even on. You can't even keep out people like that. The oppressive smell of life in Satoku's house hit me. At the entrance, there were a few pairs of shoes and sandals. I couldn't tell whether he was here or not just by looking at them. I could hear a television on somewhere. The television was in the messy dining room. There was food scattered about the table, giving an impression decidedly different from a happy family's mealtime. Meals were for eating food while thanking the person for making it. Meaning whatever occurred in this dining room wasn't a meal. Nobody in sight. No sign of anyone either. But with the television on, he must have been close. Could he have anticipated my coming and be hiding, waiting for me? The tension I felt was so thick, so tight, that I thought it would choke me. The newspaper wrapping the hatchet's thick blade didn't hamper its power at all. I tightened my grip on it, then carefully took a look around. Where had those peaceful feelings from before I arrived here gone? Even the sound of sweat bubbling up on my brow got on my nerves. And then I looked at the table and realized something. This wasn't breakfast. The grains of boiled rice were all hard and dried up. Then, was it last night's dinner? I left the dining room, keeping vigilant, went down the hallway and found the stairs to the second floor. When that man was playing with his friends, he looked out of a second-story window. It was highly possible that room was his own, and that he slept there. I tiptoed up the edges of the stairs, quietly climbing, without making a sound. I couldn't hear any kind of snoring. I didn't hear anything up there. I went through a few rooms, slowly and quietly opening the paper doors, checking inside. But I still couldn't find anyone around. To search more efficiently, I got down on the floor and pressed my ear right up to it. I could hear the television in the dining room and a low hum, perhaps a boiling water. It was then that I started to harbor some feelings of suspicion. This house wasn't right. It seemed like people had been here since the TV was on, but it wasn't normal for nobody to be around this early in the morning. I silently descended the stairs and went back to the dining room. I looked at the food scattered about. Completely dried up rice. An overturned bowl of miso soup. The package, for a side dish, bought at the supermarket. I could tell Satoko had definitely been the one who made this. The food was far from Mion's perfection or Rena's gentleness, but it was sincere. Judging by how she cooked for me at my house, and from the type and amount of side dishes, I deduced the meal was from last night. The number stamped into the food packaging read 830620. June 20th, 1983. That was yesterday. And there was food for two, which meant that this was last night's dinner, and Satoku's uncle would have been here then. My throat gets a little dry in these early morning recordings. Stop it, Keiichi. Don't even think about saying the word impossible again. Anyway, her uncle was here last night. That much was the truth. He had found fault with Satoko's food, thrown the bowl of miso soup and flung the rest everywhere. Hidden deep within my feelings of calm and composure was lit a flame of anger and a curse. Should I have ever shown this man any mercy? Bump. I heard the sound again. The one from before, like a water boiler. What was it coming from? The first floor? But where? The bathroom, maybe? Oh. I think it's going to get a little dark, whatever's about to happen. I mean, not that, like, murdering people isn't dark, but, like, I feel like what we're about to see is especially dark. I could hear the noise coming from the other side of the frosted glass at the far end of the changing room. It had to have been the sound of the water boiler for the bath. Steam was enshrouding the glass door, and the heat from it was leaking into the changing room where I was standing too. My misgivings deepened. People didn't normally take a bath this early in the morning. If one did, then it would mean that in this house, time had been stopped ever since some moment last night. Whistle, whistle, whistle. Was it being reheated? The water boiler in the bathroom had been active this whole time. I checked in a clothing basket and saw Satoko's familiar uniform stuffed in it. Oh, this might get a little interesting. The uniform had stains and dried rice stuck to it. Certainly not something she could wear today. It was probably from the miso soup at the dinner table yesterday. I looked hard at the frosted glass, but couldn't see anything through all the steam. And then, an electric surge ran through my mind, and a terrible premonition came over me. Could she... She couldn't have possibly been in there since last night. That would be impossible. Now thinking back to one of the notes, or what do they call them? They call them notes? At the end of the episode, anyway. Was something about how she smelled terrible, and she needed to be in the bath all day or something. Wonder if that's what's happening. But no. In Hinamizawa right now, nothing was impossible. I gulped audibly, then quietly pulled aside the glass door. Hot, steaming air burst out of the slight opening. The fan wasn't on in the changing room, so it went completely white with the steam. You know you got a good hot water heater when it can just go all day. Just as the hot vapor poured into the changing room, cooler air also flowed into the room with the bath. And I just heard due to being hit by that air. A very weak moan. That was all I needed to know who it was.
Sadoko!
No answer. Satoko was in the bathtub, surrounded by a thick layer of rising steam. The top half of her body was leaning over the edge of the tub, and she was passed out. The water boiler kept on making a whistling noise, as if angered. I could see the gas flame through a small window. It was roaring at full force, completely blue. Satoko's entire body was boiled red and flaccid as though her bones had melted away. She was almost like a doll, as she lay there unconscious. I wasn't sure how many seconds passed as I stared in complete bafflement. I came back to my senses and promptly shut off the boiler. Then, I dragged Satoko's small body out of the bathtub. The water in it was as hot as the water in public baths. Was she in this boiling water for the entire night? She'll die. She'll die. Satoko's body was lighter than I'd expected as I laid her on the floor and wrapped her in a towel. I went back into the bathroom and opened up the vent, creating a path for a cool breeze to come through. Upon the breeze hitting her, Satoko moaned again. I feel like maybe putting her back in the water but turning on the cold water might be a good option here. Satoko recognized me and muttered a response, but I couldn't really tell what she was saying. Her eyes were muddy and unfocused. I could tell she wasn't completely conscious. Upon closer inspection, her limbs and waist were twitching slightly. This was way worse than normal overheating. This was dangerous. Didn't they call this heat stroke? Think, what would the teacher do if a girl passed out in the middle of the summer, during a marathon in gym class or something? I know, I'll just Google this on my phone. Oh, dang it, it's 1983. I don't have a phone with internet access. I turned the water faucet in the kitchen all the way on and soaked a towel in it. Then I took the cold towel and pressed it to Satoko's forehead. Satoko reacted harshly to the coldness and let out a muffled voice. For burns, right. You would soak the burn spot under running water. Then, could I run cold water? There we go. I don't know how the human body responds to heat and cold like that, though. Can you, like, go into shock from that? Could I run cold water in the shower and cool her off like that? No. If it was that... Okay, so yeah, maybe you can go into shock. Okay, I wasn't sure. I'm not a doctor, clearly. If it was that sudden, it wouldn't be good for her heart. She'd go into shock. I think I read that once before. Let's check WebMD. Looks like you have cancer. This was about as much nursing as I could possibly give her. Anything more than this would be way too much for the likes of an amateur.
大丈夫か、貞子。もう大丈夫だからな。必ず俺が、ニーが助けてやるからな。
Oh no. 5040. What was Satoko reciting under her breath? I brought my ear to her mouth to better make out the mysterious spell-like words she kept saying. And at that moment, I understood what they were for.
貞子、お前、数を数えてるのか？なんで？
People tell little kids in the bath to count to 100 a lot, right? Satoko was counting like that. But 5,039?
バカ野郎！お前の家の風呂はいくつ数える決まりになってんだよ！
I doubted my ears and doubted her common sense. 10,000?
ふざけんなバカ野郎！1万なんて数えられるバカがどこにいるんだよ！
What is 10,000 seconds? Hold on. So 10,000 divided by 60 is 166 minutes, which would be like here 2.7 hours. That's not that bad, although that is a really hot shower, I suppose.
数えられるわけねえだろ
Unless that's not seconds, but I think it's seconds.
その前に湯だって死んじまうに決まってんだろどうしてこんなことに
おじ
Well, I guess it's a good time to kill her uncle again then. Last night, her uncle flew into a rage at the dinner she'd made, saying it stunk and was inedible. Satoko didn't understand what on earth he meant. It wasn't much different than what she usually made for him. Alright, well you don't have to eat it. Just go to bed hungry. Maybe he hated the smell of the pickled vegetables she bought in particular. Her uncle then decided the stink was originating from Satoko, and shouted at her that she never ever took baths. And then he put Satoko in the boiling water, and told her not to come out until she counted to... That's not a number. Okay, Keiichi. Alright, so stage directions. Shriek loudly for at least about 5 seconds. Count to 5. I snapped and exploded. Raising the newspaper wrapped hatchet, I stampeded through the house. I searched for anything. Traces, signs, smells, vibration, heartbeats. With a war cry, I raced up the stairs with such force I could have stomped a hole through them. Then I found the futon in the room I thought to be her uncle, and well aware he wasn't sleeping in it, I bashed it with the hatchet. Did he run into the closet? I'll bust the entire closet down, door and all. And if he's not there, maybe there's a secret door. Any switches or levers in the walls here? Alright, Kate, I'm gonna need you to take a step back. I smashed into wall after wall with the hatchet, crushing them. Dust rose into the air, and broken pieces scattered about the floor. That sounds familiar. I smashed all the glass windows too, for good measure. After I destroyed everything beyond recognition in her uncle's room, my reason finally kicked in and suppressed my emotions. Anyway, her uncle wasn't in the house right now. I'd have to leave killing him until later. Right now, I had to do something about Satoko. I went back to the changing room. Satoko was still lying limp on the floor. There was nothing more an amateur like me could do for her. I needed to take her to the clinic. Coach had treated me like a lunatic yesterday and tried to lock me up in a mental hospital. I never wanted to see his face again, but I still needed to go to the infirmary once more time. I needed to have a doctor look at Satoko. I thought about putting her in the dirty uniform lying in the laundry basket, but I had no experience dressing someone, so that would be pretty difficult. Dang it, I don't have time to be wasting here. I eventually gave up on clothing her and decided to carry her in her bath towel. You know what I would say? Okay, so the clinic's close. I was going to say, wouldn't it be faster than attempting to either run with her or attempting to balance her on the bike, which I think either of those are going to be difficult, even though she is small. Wouldn't it be better to call the clinic? You could even feign, like, hey, this is, Satoko's uncle. Yeah, she took a bath too long. Can you send over the doctor? You know, and I'd imagine, upon hearing the name Satoko, that, Coach would immediately come over, basically. And he would come in a car, probably. Adults drive cars, I think. So, that would be a lot faster, I think. But, you know, whatever. That's okay. It would be way faster to carry her there than to call 119 and get an ambulance. I threw the biggest towel I could find over her and prompted her to stand.
立てるか。俺が診療所までおぶって行ってやるから。
ありがとう。ですわ。
Her words sounded clearer than before. She was starting to come back. I cried tears of relief just knowing she'd improved even a little bit. Satoko turned over so she was lying in her face, and then put up a weak struggle to get on a knee. I smoothly swept her up and put her on my back. The towel I put on her seemed like it was about to fall off.
バスタオル痛い。
すぐ着くから。しばらくの間だけ我慢してろ。
It didn't hurt one bit to carry Satoko. She was light, too light. The lightness actually made me uneasy.